Welcome to the show. This is the Progressive Minds. Today is January 2nd, 2024, and it's Tuesday and it's 6 p.m. We're glad to be coming your way. Today we will be looking into the currently going on in our world. We're talking about global warming and its impact or its effect on public health. We are privileged to have in our midst a special guest that will be helping with the discussion this evening, Dr. Arnold. You're welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on this evening.
Oh, thank you, Sina, and Happy New
Uh,
Year.
Absolutely, and I'm sure that everyone out there, I'm sure you all had a great Christmas holidays. Holidays. Some people just want to call it holidays. Period. Whatever it is, I am confident that for all of us that made it to 2024, congratulations to you all because I know personally, not all of us who started 2023 with us were able to end it in good health and had their life intact. Some just couldn't make it, and so we're glad and thankful to to the Almighty for giving us another opportunity to live. And I pray success, prosperity for everyone that has supported the show, everyone that follows us, and actually anyone that is just out there trying to seek good um, for humanity. God bless you. Happy New Year to you as well. To you all, Dr. Arnold. I don't know if you have any uh, Happy New Year messages for your loved ones, friends.
Oh yes, just everything you were saying. Having love, prosperity, happiness, and peace in the coming year,
Mm,
and making sure that our destiny is being followed in a much more proactive way. That's why I love the name of your group and your show. We really need to be progressive in the way we're thinking
mm,
and making sure that we're doing things to make our lives better in the long term.
mm.
And talking about the global warming really actually fits really well into that picture. There's so
Okay,
many issues that are going to be surrounding it.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. Before we get into the details of why we're here today, I just want to give you a little background for those who don't know Dr. Damon T. Arnold. He is also the president of the American Public Health Association. Dr. Arnold is
Oh, that's the African Diaspora Association of Public Health Professionals. So the APHA is a different organization, but I can mention that a little bit as we're going along.
brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much for that correction. He holds the following degrees, which is a medical degree and MPH from the University of Illinois, as well as MA in Homeland and Defense Security. As Homeland and Defense Security Studies from the Center for Homeland Defense and Security, CHDS, at the Naval Postgraduate School, NPS War College. Dr. Arnold also completed a Master's of Science in Threat Response Management degree at the University of Chicago. He completed two residencies, one in internal medicine and the other occupational and environmental medicine. He served as the governor's cabinet as the director of the Illinois Department of Public Health for about 4 years, from 2017 through 2011, and run an agency that comprised of over 1,200 employees with 130 programmatic areas in an annual budget of $700 million. He received a 70 formal awards and recognition for his achievements in this capacity. He's also served 26 years in the Army National Guard as the commander of the Illinois State Joint Task Force Medical Command, and and also had also served as a qualified Black Hawk helicopter flight surgeon. Colonel Arnold served two tours of combat duty in Iraq and has received numerous um, uh, sorry for my screen, numerous military medals and recognitions, including the highly coveted Military Legion of Merit medal from President Barack Obama in his roles as a PH director, ID PH director in the military. He was involved in emergency response planning and training as well. The accolades are many, and so we would, but I would just let me just get this one out. In addition to many of his achievements, he worked for 7 years before retiring from Healthcare Services Corporation, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, Montana, um, uh, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Texas as the medical director. His duties include work and predetermination and claims area, special investigations, and Illinois government programs. Like I said, he has many accolades. He's a black belt and Shotokan, um, I'll say karate expert. He has a wife, Sharon Johnson Arnold, and of course a cat and a beautiful daughter. Dr. Arnold, if I left anything out and you would like our audience to know that piece of you, please go ahead and share. But again, it's a pleasure to have you. This is our first show 2024, and we deem it fit that we engage in this particular conversation because we're just coming from the break, and we've indulged in a lot of social activities, and there are also rumors there's uh, some kind of pandemic or some kind of virus looming in the air. And so it's appropriate that we look at what is currently going on in our environment, how it's going to impact our health going forth in the year, so we can prepare right from the onset. So, Dr. Arnold, once again, you're welcome. And again, feel free to share a bit more about yourself if you want to, and just get us into the reason we're here this evening.
Oh, great. We just move into the reason we're here this evening.
Awesome.
You did a very good job in introducing me. And, I
Pleasure.
always say that that's past is prologue, so it's gone. So we're moving into the future. And
Yes.
I guess it's an appropriate time in the beginning of the year to be doing
Mm,
that. The American, I was talking about the African Diaspora Association of Public Health
mm,
Professionals.
mhm,
And the motto, the vision, and the mission really are perfecting African diaspora health and wellness through unity, leadership, and education. A dedicated network of public health professionals that ensures African diaspora health and wellness. And then a mission is to advocate for and unify public health professionals regarding STEAM education. So that's science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, but also artificial intelligence usage is coming in, and it's coming like a juggernaut towards us. And how are we going to be, getting involved with the AI world? Also, the employment that's necessary in STEAM and AI, and then also the healthcare support systems ownership throughout the African diaspora. And a lot of people don't know, but we actually have about 84 million African diaspora uh, people from origin of the African diaspora from slavery that live in Brazil. That's almost twice, it's more than twice the number of people who are actually from the African diaspora living in the United States
mm,
of America. We have millions and millions, 9, 10 million, depending on where you're going, and the different island chains as well. Tobago, Grenada. You can start listing all the islands where we are, Antigua. So the reason why I'm putting that into the picture is that the African diaspora is really has been neglected from a public health perspective, and also from a perspective of STEAM education, which I think is fundamental to mounting a response and being into the um, into a situation where we are getting prepared for a future. Even if global warming is coming, how are we getting ready for this? Are
mm.
we creating the kinds of educational opportunities we need to be able to engage issues as And already saying, well, the global warming will occur. No, it's already occurring. We are already in a time period where global warming has found itself. So what we have to do, in part, is to dispel, the misinformation regarding the African diaspora's historical contributions to science, public health, and medicine. And in order to do that, we have to rewrite history in a sense, to facilitate African, diaspora public health professional scholarship and employment, to assure tangible impacts are occurring when the response is so critical to our existence and our survival.
Mm.
So that we must strengthen our community, identity, resiliency, health, and wellness as we're moving down this path into the future, confronting the issues that are going to be central to responding appropriately to global warming.
Right.
Uh, so some of the things that we need to do are things like creating a database of resources and directories that are going to be specific to our needs,
Okay.
and also to have product lines, educational product lines, where we talk about the correct history surrounding the African diaspora,
Okay.
also job creation, and then cultural arts, which is also not just the aesthetic arts but the healing arts, from the standpoint of art therapy and how it integrates within our community, for reestablishment of a culture. Okay, you have a question.
Fantastic. No, I was going to say that thanks for breaking that aspect of the conversation down, because I know this is something new that you're working on, and it's a very very important conversation to be had within the African diaspora, and so we're looking forward to getting it out there into communities and organizations that are stakeholders, or if I may use that word, or actually that are already doing work in these spaces, so we can see how we can harness the conversation. So again, thanks for breaking that down. But I want us to dive into the global warming conversation. Again, before the show, you and I have had a few discussions on this, and it's outstanding what is going on around us. The what do you call it? The ice. What's the when you hear of tsunamis and earthquakes,
Yes.
and all the ice melting and stuff. Can you please help us understand what's going on around the world in terms of global warming, and then we can bring it down to how it's affecting our public health.
Okay, sure. So our Earth,
Mm.
we actually revolve around the sun, of course, right? And we have planets that we've picked up, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, you know, Pluto, Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn. So all these planets are in our solar system, but our sun actually takes about 240 million years to circle around a galactic center. So our sun is actually revolving around our galaxy. And so it's a very small amount of time that we're living within. And things have been very, very stable in the universe up to this point for millions of years of our existence.
Mm.
And so when we started to work with things, most people point to cotton for slavery. And if you read something like the 1619 Project, is an excellent book that is really good to read. Nicole Hannah Jones wrote that book. She's now at Howard University, but she mentions in it about the sugar trade, and it's something I was aware of, but the dimensions of the sugar trade and tobacco and cotton are really extremely important to understand. They fueled our economies before even oil became important. And as time went on, we built this mechanism of industry that started to pull in things like oil. We started pulling oil out the ground. It became part of a combustible material. We use natural gas. All of these things are adding to the carbon dioxide that is throughout, distributed throughout the world.
Right.
And as that goes on, we have a thing called the greenhouse effect, where we are trapping the heat that is coming from the sun and bouncing off of the surface of the earth is getting trapped in our atmosphere. So it's called global warming.
Mm.
If you do that, then some of the things that can happen is that you start to change your rain and your snow patterns. You start having stronger storms, which we're experiencing even more now. So as the temperature increases incrementally, we actually are changing the climate over a long term. So climate is a long term change in the weather pattern, whereas when we have severe weather, so weather itself is really present time. We're actually seeing tornadoes more frequently. We're seeing forest fires. We're damaging the coral in the sea because of the warm temperatures in the water of the oceans.
Mm.
We're having rising sea levels and warmer oceans overall. We're also seeing higher temperatures and more heat waves. So, and when we start looking at Texas, what they just went through in Arizona, they had time periods where they had more than 14 days of 110-degree weather, which is unheard of. This 2023 was the warmest year on record in the last 250,000 years.
Wow. Wow.
So we're seeing changes in animal migration patterns, how
Mm.
long they're staying
Mm.
in areas they would normally migrate away from. We're seeing the encroachment of species that are invasive from warmer climates, tropical climates coming further north. Things like malaria. We're seeing a couple of cases here and there in California, Florida. We're starting to see things like more droughts and wildfires on the West Coast,
Yeah.
which are devastating. And then we're seeing a change actually in the plant life cycle, because plants normally will go dormant during the winter. But if they are in a warmer environment, they stay longer and produce more of the allergens that we normally see. And these allergens are causing people to have more problems with their, with their allergies and taking medications. Also, the permafrost that is over things like Iceland, we're seeing volcanic activity increase. Now, the thickness of the ice and the snow acts as a counter pressure, and this has been documented in many of the scientific articles, Science Magazine, and you name it, right? These things are actually counter pressures pushing down on top of the volcanoes. As you start to melt that ice and decrease the overall weight of the ice, it allows the volcano to progress more quickly. It's not being countered by this big sheet of ice above it. So we're starting to see more volcanic activity, and scientists feel there's a correlation with that, with the thinning of the ice and some of the volcanic activity we're seeing even now as we speak in Iceland. We've had recent volcanic activity. There was a time period about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where we actually had volcanic activity where it stopped flights going into Europe. So we're seeing these changes, and less snow and ice also means less reflection of sunlight that hits the earth going back into space. So this is something that we've got to be paying attention to. It has deep implications for our waterways. We're starting to see waterways open up, for example, up in the north near Russia, that were, traditionally closed off, and in Canada. So there are now disputes about the waterway rights and who owns the waterway rights, and also increasing a possibility of people going to do more mining in those areas. If the permafrost is gone, it becomes more habitable by humans. So more oil drilling, more natural resource extraction from the ground, which adds to the global warming.
A lot of information there. Thank you for sharing, Dr. Arnold. I guess for some time now, I myself have trying to, and I get these are things you can just look up on Google. But as an expert, I know there are differences between weather and climate. We use those words interchangeably. Can you help give us a
Mm.
fine line or a clear distinction?
Yes, so climate is more the overall pattern of what we're exposed to, right?
Okay.
So if you look at the two things that are essential
Mm,
for weather, it's water and wind, right?
okay.
And heat. So the sun, the heat, the water, how it's either it's going to be rain or snow or sleet or ice, right? So it's going to take different forms depending on the temperature. But the
Mm,
wind pattern is pushed by high pressure and low pressure areas, and it moves things around the earth, the globe.
okay.
So our weather pattern, weather is what's happening today, this week, short term.
Okay.
Climate is very long term look at how those things play out over a longer period of time.
Okay. Okay. And
Yeah.
no, that explains it. And thank you. And so being a colonel and a veteran at a
Mhm.
very and having worked at that very high level, there are some school of thought that says that NASA activities also is a very strong role in climate change, in global warming. Can you speak to that?
Oh, you're saying NASA
Yes,
activity?
NASA. Yes,
Oh,
NASA.
okay. Well, yeah, NASA actually contributes pretty, probably a smaller contribution to global warming.
Okay.
The things that are really the keys are the burning of fossil fuels, even the production of meat.
Okay.
So we actually produce tons of carbon dioxide just by producing meat and not being more of a vegan diet. I am more of a vegan,
Okay.
but the meat production
Uh-huh.
and the meat industry in the world, chickens and cows, and
Mm, mm.
that actually contributes a tremendous amount. You've heard before about cows passing gas and that kind of thing, methane.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So methane is a very potent, as well as ozone
Okay. Yeah.
and CO2 gas that actually goes into the atmosphere and contributes to global warming. So those are those are the things that we really are looking at. Is more what are we doing with automobiles and what are we doing with heating systems in our homes and gas. Mhm.
No, we'll come to that. What you just said reminds me of a funny story or
Oh,
a
yeah,
funny incident that happens in Africa sometimes.
yeah,
When you talk about cows passing gas, actually, there are certain parts. And growing up as a kid, I've kind of seen some of the Fulani guys when they're taking their flock or their cows to graze, right? Um, you sometimes see them, doing these things like when the cow droppings
yeah,
when it's fresh, it produces this heat, right? This
yeah.
kind of vapor, and they literally inhale it. It gets them high.
Oh,
People,
okay.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's a practice in some tribes on the continent of Africa, and
Yeah,
so that just tells this is brings to mind when you talk about cow and just the general production of meat and
yeah.
how the process is contributing to global warming. Is it by the slaughtering and then the burning of the skin? Is that what the problem is? Is that what's causing the
Oh, yeah. Two things. One is that you have to use a lot of grain and to feed the cows. So
oh
you're actually one thing is that you're actually harvesting all this these this nutrients to feed these cows.
okay
And the cows, we have to remember if you look at the ecosystem,
mm,
the most important element, one of the most important elements, if not the, is a tree, is a plant.
mm,
Because see, trees and plants extract things from the minerals in the ground, and they use the sun to build the building blocks they need for their bodies, um, as opposed to us who have to eat things. We can't get our energy directly from the sun, so we eat meat, we eat vegetables, plants. So those animals that we eat are only the middlemen. They would
Mm,
have nothing if they didn't eat plants.
right,
They can't produce their own energy, right?
right,
So
right.
that's how they get their energy. So we actually waste tons and tons of food every year feeding cattle in order to produce meat. And then you have the meat itself. You have to butcher it. You have to raise them. And I said before, producing gases as they're going along. But then also we have to transport this. And so we're using industries. So the entire chain, the whole supply chain, is wrought with the production of gases that contribute to greenhouse gases. If we were to go to a vegan diet, which is much healthier for us,
Yeah.
and I can always come back and give you a talk on that one.
Okay.
But and what it does to our arteries and
Mm,
our health.
mm. Yeah.
But the key thing is that with making sure that we watch the environment and we're eating things that are more consistent with a healthier, more eco-friendly system.
Right.
And those are the things that, between the cows and the fossil fuels we're burning, the coal, those kinds of things, we're actually contributing to greenhouse gases. There are a lot of other solutions to it that we need
Okay.
to be following, and
Which will be
that's one of the things that President Biden actually. There was an Inflation Reduction Act that was signed on August 16th of 2022, and it was a bipartisan bill. But what ended up happening, if people weren't paying attention to it, it was a stroke of genius. First of all, the prior president got us out of the Paris Accord and all that. President Biden put us back in, thank God, and he reduced the deficit with the Inflation Reduction Act, but he also lowered prescription drug prices, and a really critical third element, investing in domestic energy production while promoting clean energy. So there is something that I think that it's really worth it for people who are interested in this to go and read. But there is by his executive orders, he actually created a revitalizing our nation's commitment to environmental justice for all. That was his executive order 14096. So by the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and then he created them and told the Congress that they had to make our nation stronger throughout a history where the only nation in the world that has come out of every crisis we've entered stronger than we went into it. We're doing it
yeah.
again here on the climate crisis. So he said that on June 19th of 23.
Right.
But what he wanted was for them to create something. And what they did was they actually created the infrastructure, the National Climate Resilience Framework on September 23. People should read this because it has implications for employment, for training. It is a very important document for us to comprehend and hold on to.
Okay. We would give a reference point where people can grab this information if they need to follow up with it. So having given us some of the causes to global warming, I'm sure, and then you mentioned one of the solutions, which is for people to start eating more, people to start leaning towards vegan, practices, right? So to speak. Now, I know there are other solutions that you can mention. So maybe you can just drop one or two solutions as we on this topic. But I also want you to alert us or inform us regarding potential viruses that are looming around the corner. There are rumors here and there. So if you may want to share a little bit of light on that.
Sure. Yes. Well, as far as solutions go, I think one of the things is really making sure that we follow some of the precepts that were put into this framework. Making sure we embed this whole idea idea of climate and adaptation into our management and planning in our communities. We have got to be directly involved in it as people. So we cannot sit aside and say that we are not affected by this or don't have any concerns about it. As we're, having mounting boxes, delivered to our homes and all those kinds of things, making sure that we're following some kinds of steps that we can take personally to separate our trash, making sure that we have recycling going on. If you
Right.
want to, the reduced cost now of solar energy for homes is another very positive prospect as well. And in making sure we invest in companies or in industries that are supporting this,
Right.
making sure that our schools, that we demand that our schools are really adept at teaching science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, and also our trade schools in building solar panels and building wind mills. Making sure that people are directly involved in this. Uh, you know, with respect to people being exposed to more viruses and those kinds of things.
Before you
That
before
is
you before you transition into that,
okay. Okay.
still on solutions, would you say
Mhm.
countries like China and of course
Mhm.
America, Europe, all these heavy industrialized nations must play that leading role in curbing global warming? And from your expert viewpoint, you see them doing a lot in that direction.
Yes, I do. One of the things that happens is that there's a thing called the Conference of Parties. It is actually it was established by the United Nations, and the United Nations actually has a meeting every year. They
Okay.
just had the COP28 meeting,
Mm,
but after the Inflation Reduction Act was passed in 2022, they
mm.
had a meeting, the COP27 meeting in Egypt. And one of the things that I think that disturbs me a bit, very much so, is that when I look at the G20 countries, those are the ones that actually talk about how we're going to respond to the environmental crisis, how we're going to have, maintain the global market systems and those kinds of things. There are 20 countries involved. And if you look at Africa, the only country that is part of the G20 is South Africa. It excludes 90% of 99% of Africa, as far as countries that could potentially participate in this. If you look at the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Congo actually produces about 60 or more percent of the global cobalt, and that's required for your batteries, for your electronic batteries, electric batteries for vehicles. So electric vehicles need these batteries. There's lithium that's also obtained from Argentina. There are other countries that have natural resources that are going to be essential for the transition from a uh, global oil-based economy to
Okay.
one that's going to now be based on minerals and a different type of technology that goes
Okay.
into the building of of green movement kinds of projects.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fa-
so
fa-
Africa needs to become much more on the front center stage. It needs to be
yes.
recognized more as 54 countries that can actually participate.
I, I think Africa would, but it's obvious that Africa is still, most countries in Africa are still developing, and are not necessarily involved in heavy industrial activities and projects like the West. And so I am sure that now that the countries that are causing most damage to our climate are
Yes.
taking the initiative to curb the situation. I know that the industrialized countries, or some of the industrialized countries in Africa, would also join in that conversation, which is of
Yes.
course which is what South Africa is doing, and because they are very developed when it comes to some of the African countries. But having shared this, thank you so much for sharing. But I want to go back to the
Well, can I say
fact.
one thing? One thing about that is that the African countries are developing, but that is a plus and you always have to look at the plus and the minus. So the
Okay.
plus side is that it's foundational, that it can start a new way of thinking and doing something,
Yes.
and it can build, and having a hand with the United States,
Right.
having a hand that is going to actually help to support it,
Right.
because now we have solar power, so we don't have to put all these big lines that we see here
Yeah.
in this country. We don't have to put telephone lines up. We have cell phones. So
Yes.
the technology is rapidly changing, so it can really change things in
And
a
we have
short
sun.
order.
We have sun 24/7 all year round.
Yes.
We have the sun. Yeah. So solar is actually what African nations should be going into. So I
Yeah.
agree completely. I agree. Thank you so much for sharing. You're listening to the Progressive Mind Show. My name is Senna, aka Alinko. Here is where we build our communities through dialogue. And today we're talking to Dr. Damon T. Arnold, an expert in global warming and also a retired general, colonel in the U.S. Army. And we are looking at global warming, its impact on public health. We're just coming from the holidays, and I haven't engaged in a lot of activities. Dr. Arnold, please share with us, as you were, in what you were previously going to, we were talking, as we were previously indicating, some of the viruses that are out there that we should be looking out for, or taking steps to help our immune system, if in case it becomes a pandemic situation. And is there any pandemic looming?
Yes. The thing about the pandemics is that they are always looming. We are in a time period where we thank goodness we have places like the CDC. They really did a lot of great work during COVID-19, but of course the geopolitical situation tarnished the viewpoint, I think, of what they were actually doing. There was a lot of great things that happened that saved millions of lives in countries here and around the world because of their research, the things they were doing to develop vaccines. I'm a strong believer in vaccines and vaccination. I've been on in hospitals where people begged to be vaccinated once they were placed on a ventilator, and it was too late. Uh, it's nothing, no joke when you start seeing what the devastating consequences of the not being vaccinated are. So now we're facing a time period where there is a uh, there is a movement of the lines that we normally would have in weather patterns
Mm.
going northward, at least in the United States. It's happening in multiple other countries. And because of the global warming, one of the things that people don't really talk about much is displacement. We have more people being displaced from their countries who are moving. Millions and millions of people around the world are moving from place to place because of desertification, famine, crops that are failing. And if we don't pay attention to that, um, things that have a tendency to go with that are also insect populations, rodent populations, birds. They're actually moving from environments that they normally would be in and are moving out to warmer climates that are above their zone that they normally would be in. So here in the United States, we had things like, you've heard of Zika virus before, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes, yes, yes.
and we saw, COVID-19 coming overseas from China, from Wuhan,
Mm.
the Wuhan province. There are other infections that the CDC is constantly monitoring. to make sure that they don't move outside of their zone. So we have Ebola, we have all kinds of things that are occurring in various parts of the world. And it's one thing I always want people to really deeply understand, that it is not tied to any people. So the presence of a virus or bacteria is part of nature.
Mm.
And so it can move from place to place, and sometimes they become stigmatized. I went through the time period where we first encountered HIV in this country. And so people just sort of skipped over HIV and went back to, the 1917 pandemic, right? And like nothing else has happened since 1917 in the country. But we've had outbreaks of all types here. And so people have a tendency to stigmatize these things. They have nothing to do with the person that they are infecting. They are just opportunists.
Okay.
These viruses and bacteria.
Right. Thanks for sharing, Dr. Arnold. Is there any truth in some of the, again, social media rumors, and even sometimes on some mainstream media, of what is happening in China currently? We hear there's some virus that is affecting kids in China, and if these things start happening in China, it's only a matter of time that it crosses over to other countries, and of course here. Have you heard of it? And what is that?
Yes. So there is currently they are monitoring a virus in China that's occurring in kids, and they are still characterizing the virus itself, because you have to really study it. And one of the things is that you have variants. So the viruses can mutate if they are not like we did see with COVID-19, right? We've had so many different variants coming through. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that is that's different now than we did have in the 1800s, 1700s, even early 1900s, is the amount of travel that's going on in the world. So you can get on a plane and be basically almost anywhere in the world within less than 24 hours. And you could be infected when you go. So monitoring people for infection is going to become increasingly important.
Okay.
They're going to need more funding. Right now, they try their best to make sure that this doesn't happen, but the system of making sure that these bacterial entities and viruses don't transmit from one location to another is becoming more difficult with increasing travel. So that is a possibility that would occur, but we have not seen that as yet, thank God. There was a report potentially of a couple of places here where they thought that maybe they saw this virus, but I'm still following that string and finding out more about how this virus is going to play out.
Fantastic. It is. We'll take a short break. When we come back, the show continues. We are talking to Dr. Colonel Damon T. Arnold. He is a global warming expert, also the founder and president of Africa Diaspora Public Health Association, if I got that right. All right. So we'll take the short break. When we come back, the show will continue. This is the Progressive Mind Show. We shall be right back. We are back to the show, and we're going to be at this point talking to Dr. Damon Arnold. We want to look at the water system in the state of Illinois, and we will go in some detail. So if you have questions about water, which one is better than the other, what filter to use, should we use filters at all? Should we drink from the tap water? Some people do, some don't. And so if you have questions, feel free to ring in and share your opinion or ask questions. Number to ring in is 815-277-5047. 815-277-5047. We're going to go straight to Dr. Arnold, but before that, I want to remind you that this is a 501c platform. Your donations to us always go a long way in helping our production on a weekly basis. But we also are specialized in building websites, graphic work, and all other marketing materials. Now, if you reach out to the info, the number, not the number on the screen, but if you reach out to us on our Instagram page, send us a message. If you do have any need in graphic work, websites, apps, logos, you can reach out to us on our social media pages or call 815-409-9123. 815-409-9123. You can also send us an email to info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. info.progressiveminds@gmail.com for all your social media, marketing, graphic work, graphic needs, websites. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll give you great quality work at very, very affordable prices. We are open for business 24 hours. You can reach out to us. Let's go back to Dr. Arnold to hear more about our water system, the drinking water in the state of Illinois. Dr. Arnold.
Yes, the drinking water situation. It's really, it's really important to realize that. When I was a student for public health, I used to look at the reports, and we normally list about 6 to 7 different chemicals in a report that are the ones that they focus on. But it's important to realize that there are thousands of chemicals out there, besides the ones that we get the reports on.
Okay.
People are dumping their medications in their in their toilets and sinks at home once they've expired, or they don't want to take them. We're picking up different traces of even pharmaceutical agents in water. And one of the other things is lead in the pipes, which is getting a lot of attention now. We know that lead in pipes actually leads to developmental delays in children, especially, and they can cause, actually a diminution or a decrease in, a child's IQ level because of the effects that they have on the nervous system. So we actually are in a time period where the water quality is a critical issue for us to be paying attention to. Also, as I mentioned before about invasive species and those kinds of things, we're seeing that affect our waterways more. Our water actually has been reported as being cleaner than it has in the recent decade because of the decrease in some of the industrial activities along the shorelines that we've experienced, and better, water treatment facility management. But we still have to be on guard for some of the things that we're seeing coming through. As a matter of fact, during COVID-19, one of the ways that they actually chose to follow this, outbreak was with looking at sewage water, to pick up what they were seeing in the way of viral loads, from the COVID-19. So it was really an interesting approach to but that's the same sewage water that is going and being cleansed and going back into our regular general system. So again, drinking tap water is okay, but I recommend people get the lead tested in their houses and homes. There's now a big government push to get lead out of our pipes and to replace everything with PVC. Uh, um, and it's happening in some communities, but the poorer communities, the ones that uh, stand to be really heavily impacted by it, really need to be speaking up to get that done.
Would you advise that people should stay completely clear of drinking tap water?
Well, I think that the water is a necessary thing for life and all that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I think there probably are some relative safety levels. The thing I would be most concerned about with our water is lead, making sure that you don't really have a high lead level at this point.
How would you know?
But you can get it tested. There are actually test kits that you can ask for.
Okay.
You can go to some of the governmental agencies, or you can, there are some lead testing services that are out there
Okay.
that will do that for you. But making sure that you have a filter, I would at least filter the water. If you
Right.
have like one of those Brita filters or something that's going
Brita.
to try to decrease the amount
Of lead.
Yes, because not everyone can afford Hinkley Schmidt, or Hinkley
Uh-huh.
water systems and that kind of thing.
So these testing devices, apart from getting them from government agencies, are they readily available in certain stores, or maybe get them online?
Oh, online, yeah. I mean, online will give you a whole resource, a listing of, available places to get that, for you to test it in your home, making sure that your kids or you are not being exposed to it.
So if you test it, what amount of lead should be uh, acceptable, or well, yeah, what amount of lead can you compromise on? If I can,
Yeah,
if,
they were looking at microgram level, so 10 micrograms and less, but and they actually decreased the amount of lead that they think that children should be exposed to recently, through the CDC, Health and Human Services. They felt that we should be really shooting for trying to eliminate lead from the water systems. However, remember that lead is actually found in foods also. It's part of agricultural things because lead is in soil. It's in part of our environment. But this is lead in pipes that actually increases the level of lead beyond those things you find in nature. Okay. So keeping it as low as possible is probably advisable if you can't eliminate it.
All right. And thank you for sharing, Dr. Arnold. Some argue that, if you live in the city, don't mess with the city water at all. But but when you're in the burbs, yeah, that's you could. And actually, some also talk in the reverse, right? Oh, the city water is better than suburb, and vice versa. Like I said, would you want to touch? Just speak on that.
Yeah, it depends on the different places that supply water, right? So you did have problems out in University Park, right? So that's a suburban area with lead, because what had happened was they switched the water sources and then used a phosphorus-based compound to try to coat the pipes, but it caused some leaching of the lead, so it increased the levels to a certain degree. But so it really goes back to what is your source. What type of environment are you living in? So if you're living in a suburb and you still have a lot of chemical plants around and this and that, and there's a potential contamination of water, or you have lead pipes, outdated plumbing systems, those kinds of things, you can still be affected. I think in the city environment, the water source, is drinkable. You can drink it, but I'm one of those people that errs on the side of caution and says that be careful and make sure that you're you're not having problems with lead contamination in your home and your piping systems.
Okay.
That I mean, that's a public health advice. I mean, for people to follow. But people drink water. I mean, people are still living and they're still surviving drinking, city water or suburban water. But again, it's a relative risk for your health.
Right.
And what do you want to be exposed to?
Okay. Thank you so much again. Truly appreciate this conversation so far. And if you have a question for Dr. Arnold, please feel free to put it in the comment section, or you can ring 815-409, sorry, 815-277-5047. 815-277-5047. Please feel free to share your comments or your questions regarding any of these public health issues going around that you may have concerns about or concerns with or have issues with. You can feel free to ask Dr. here issues concerning global warming. And now we're talking about water. In a few minutes, I'll let him. I will also want Doc to share with us um, what steps we should be taking. That, but prior to me asking that specific question, if anybody discovers some high levels of lead in their drinking water, let's say after this show they go buy a kit to test, like
Mhm.
man, we've been drinking all this stuff all this while. What immediate medical steps can they start taking to be, possibly alleviate the effects that those lead taken in their body could be having on them?
Yeah, and okay, so lead, it has the same kind of ionic radius as calcium. So calcium is in your bone, and so lead has a tendency to seek out bone, and it can become, part of your bone structure. Um, so it's dangerous for you to try to, chelate that. And what a chelate means, it's a mechanism, a molecule that can actually grab onto lead like a claw. So that's where the name comes from. Chelating is like cella or claw that grabs onto the lead and can take it out of the, out of the organs or out of your bone. But you have to be very, very careful with that. So, you know, trying to treat yourself is really not a good idea. uh, Trying to decrease your lead level.
Mm,
Having a physician and a toxicologist in particular, making sure that you're, the Poison Control Center, going online and looking at the recommendations they have there as well is really a
right.
great idea to tie
Okay.
into that. But really, it's eliminating the source of further contamination is really essential
Mm,
to make sure you don't continue to accumulate lead. Um, it's really interesting because I always say, what determines your destiny, your healthcare destiny,
mm,
and what determines your healthcare destiny is your hand. So your hand actually is the thing that brings to your mouth the things that are going to cause the most impact on your life.
mm,
When we first started to talk, I started talking about, sugar and cotton and tobacco, and
mm.
how this country really built its empire and its wealth and that of Europe on the
Okay.
back of sugar, right?
Mm, mhm,
So that actually also has molasses from sugar cane, and it makes rum, so alcohol.
mm,
So if you look at what your hand brings to your mouth, the things that can really cause you to have a poor health outcome
mm,
are, meat with saturated fats,
mm.
sugar, salt, smoking, alcohol, illegal drugs, illicit drugs, sexually transmitted infections, even through the mouth. So your mouth is a portal to your future health.
Mm.
So whatever you're putting through your mouth, and it could
From
be the water that contains lead, right?
right.
Whatever you're putting through your mouth is going to have a direct impact on your metabolism of your body, how your organs function, and your healthcare outcome.
Mm,
And so, if you're eating things like fresh fruits and vegetables and legumes and nuts and whole grains, and you were, eating more of a healthy diet, that stops you from developing, because of the phytochemicals and vitamins and nutrients in vegetation, it stops you from clogging your arteries. All those other things I mentioned, that but the particularly the saturated fats, the sugars, um, and smoking, all really do damage to your blood vessels in your body. So that can lead to heart attacks, strokes, kidney failure, liver failure, and it can affect the lungs. The cigarette smoking itself, when I was director of the Illinois Department of Public Health, I really pushed and helped to pass the Smoke Free Illinois Act. And the reason is because it was one of the leading causes of death in our communities
Mm,
for people in our population.
mm,
So lung cancer, and if the lung cancer doesn't get you, the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, where you see people walking around with tanks.
mm.
And if you go to a casino, you see people sitting there smoking cigarettes, and they were really resistant to the idea, right? And people sitting there with oxygen tanks. Why is that? It's because they are. It has something to do with how addictive your personality can be,
Right.
and they can get
Wow.
you hooked on another thing.
Yeah.
So these are the things that we have to be very, very careful of. And
Yeah.
so the healthy things that's talking about, the more of a vegetable fruit diet, actually decreases the oxidative stress on your arteries in your body.
Okay.
Those same arteries are the ones that COVID-19 was attacking. That's
Right.
why people's lungs filled up with fluid. They were put on ventilators. They couldn't get the oxygen past all the fluid in their lungs,
Mm,
so they could supply it to their body.
mm. No, thank you so much, Dr. Arnold. We have done 6 minutes past 7 p.m. Central here in the beautiful city of Chicago. We are about to wrap this conversation up, and we have learned a few things about global warming, the solution. We've also touched on some public health concerns coming from the break and starting a new year. The focus is making sure that we're in the right frame. We're in the right frame of our bodies when it comes to our health, and we're taking some of these steps, and we're being aware of what it is of some of these bad practices that can cause health problems for us. And so, as we wind down this discussion this evening, Dr. Arnold, I still see people wearing masks, and there's still some you still using, which is good. We're still using hand sanitizers. Would you advise that for though we can keep these practices as long as we could, or would you say, hey, people, nobody should be paranoid? We seem to be things seem to be safe. No need for nose masks, whether you're in public or you're at home. Don't forget hand sanitizers. Let's just be free. Let's just have a free mind, and then just make sure we're eating well and sleeping well and all that. Would you want to speak to that?
Yes, and some of the things that I think that are important is that using that and wearing a mask, I think, is still fine for people to do, and hand sanitizers. Again, as we're going into this whole global warming thing, the potential for, what we call zoonotic diseases,
Okay.
transmitting from animals to humans. All
Uh-huh.
these things are potentials. Outbreaks are still potentials.
Right.
We need to be very conscious of what we're doing. And if we're sick, we need to stay home. We need to protect the rest of the population if we're really sick. And and touching things, what we call fomites, towels, those kinds of things. There can be a transmission of virus or bacteria in those kinds of situations. So I think making sure that you protect yourself. The CDC recommended, and it's very, very important that people in the hospital system still use masks, and also those people who are visiting the people in the hospital. You can go into a hospital and without wearing a mask and spread a virus to a child or an adult that has cancer, and that could be the end of their life because they get sick and this can't withstand both things happening in their health history. So I'd say protecting people. If I'm going into a very crowded place, if I'm going shopping, I'll still wear
Mm,
a mask for that. I make sure I wipe my hands if I'm picking up a cart and those kinds of things. But I think at this time and period, as we're still going through, three things I recommend. The key thing, before we even start talking about masking and hand sanitation and all that, get vaccinated. Get vaccinated against three things are going on right now. So the flu vaccine is really important for you to get that. To get the updated COVID-19 vaccine. It has also been effective against the new variant that's about 40% now. Is a new variant that's out there that will cause people problems who are unvaccinated. And then, making sure you get the respiratory syncytial virus vaccine. That's the RSV. So those three are really important. It's important for you to keep up with your other things too. Making sure that you get vaccinations, tetanus, diphtheria. When you do, I advise people to keep your own medical record for each person in your family at home.
okay. So
Keep
you
all your
mentioned three.
records. Yes, because they can get rid of records after 7 years, or depending on which institution you're going to. So
Mm,
make sure you keep those records.
okay. I'm sorry. I was going to ask. You said three things. So one, vaccine, and then two.
Oh yeah. So vaccine for COVID-19,
Uh-huh.
respiratory syncytial virus, and then the flu. Those
Okay.
three are
All right.
essential. And
Okay.
then
Thank you.
also wearing a mask and using hand sanitizers when you're going into an environment with a lot of people around. If you're at home with one or two people and they're not sick, you can play it by ear. But if you have people coming in from outside, you have to start thinking about how you want to handle that, because we're in the season right now where we're seeing increase in those cases.
When of course when COVID, you know, broke out and everybody was, we were trying to deal with it, people got into the habit of drinking hot tea with lemon and honey. Those types of herbal concoctions became very prevalent and it helped a lot. Would you recommend it?
Well, they can make you feel a little bit better, but they really, it's more, more comforting than anything. Um, I have different things I use, like Listerine and goggling with that and that kind of thing. All those things are good, but it's really getting the vaccination. That's your
Okay.
key. That's your foundation for
Okay.
protecting yourself.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Arnold. We done 30 minutes past 7 p.m. and we would bring the show to a close this evening, and then we would definitely look forward to having you here to engage in other discussions in your area of expertise. But before we go, we've touched on a few things this evening. Please feel free to leave us with some words of wisdom as um, we get to run, as we get to prepare ourselves for another marathon for another brilliant year. Please go ahead.
Yes. Well, I wish everyone well, for this coming year. But when I was in the military, one of the things someone asked me, well, when when you start thinking about, doing military service, and you're sent to different countries and all that, and they said, well, don't you worry about the oil thing and who's doing this and who's doing that. And I said, you know, I took an oath to be served, right, as a soldier.
Mm,
But it's up to the American people and to the people in the nations of every nation, really, to start to think about, what is it that you need to do to participate, to go to the rallying points of public debate and discussion, and to really contribute to how your country is developing and what is going on in the political arena. So I would urge people especially on the issue of climate change, to become much more deeply involved. It is affecting people in ways it never has before. Just in the last year, catastrophic home losses, uh, people losing their lives. Now we're seeing these mega waves hitting the coast of California, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
these things are happening. We have to be involved in. So I would say for this coming year, learn, educate yourself, realize that science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics are essential for us to survive. And then one other story I'll tell you is very quickly. They asked me to do a talk on at the CDC, and I had about 300 people in the audience. And I said, "What do you want me to talk about?" And they said, "Oh, well, why don't you talk about equity?" I said, "Okay, good." I said, "Tell me what you know about Albert Einstein." And what they told me was, "Oh, E equals MC square. He was the greatest physicist ever. Absolute genius. He escaped from Nazi Germany. He worked at, he taught at over in the East Coast at Princeton University. He was in California for a while. Oh, what else? His wife's name was Emma." I said, "Oh, great. Okay." Albert Einstein was the co-chair of the anti-lynching movement in this country. He also wrote a letter to the Supreme Court to stop W.E. Du Bois from being falsely imprisoned. He went to an inner city African American school, elementary school. He never taught an undergraduate or graduate student at Princeton. He was a bench scientist, and he volunteered his time in the community. And when the people in the media asked him, "Why are you wasting your time with these kids?" he said, "What you don't understand is that you're committing a great sin in this country. The absolute skills, abilities, talents, and absolute genius, and I see in these children, is being utterly wasted." You know, so I want to say that because we have got to change the paradigm of what's going on in communities. Our poorest communities have some of the same geniuses and people if they're given the educational opportunity. As we're moving towards STEAM, and STEAM is going to be critical in our dealing with climate change and the structuring of our built environment and our land usage, it's essential that we train these children to be a part of that picture. And if we don't, it's going to be our fault. We'll lose a great, great opportunity to have a more harmonized society, but one where people find value in themselves and the things that they produce, their creativity, expression.
fantastic. If you may, Dr. Arnold, I know that was supposed to be your closing remarks, but then something you were sharing struck me. And I remember the recent tsunami or the recent earthquake, though I think that just happened in Japan, I think yesterday or today, right?
Yes.
Uh, right. So now Japan has been known to be prone to these natural disasters.
Yeah.
Earthquake has always been happening there. Can someone easily connect what just happened to some of the effects of global warming, or it's just, or we could just say, oh, that's Japan. They always have that issue.
Yeah, I don't have enough expertise to link that myself.
Gotcha.
There might be maybe some theories out there, but
Right.
one thing that's really essential in what you're saying to understand is that so as you have disasters, so we had Fukushima before, right? Where we
Yes.
had the nuclear reactor meltdown kind of thing. It really didn't melt down the way it could have, which would have been catastrophic. But we also had a earthquake at the same time, and then we had, as a reaction to it, we had this oceanic wave come in, right? And you're actually hitting the land. So all these things happen at one time. So as you start going through these things, the heat waves and forest fires, you're leaving things in a worse position than they were before that happened. You're waiting, you're sitting there. If you don't recover, the next wave is going to make it even worse. And it's going to make it worse and worse and worse. So we have got to find a way of being able to recover quickly, making sure that we start looking at mechanisms of resiliency and adaptation. And adaptation is when we start making sure we can adapt to different things. And a lot of people feel that adaptation is going to be more important in the short term because as we're trying to unroll resiliency, unless we have enough people who are saying this is what we need to do, and the money is going the right way, and they follow, President Biden's lead on it, then we are going to be stuck. And we're
Fantastic.
going to have to figure out how to adapt to the new world, the new
Mm,
reality, and
mm,
so that's those things are really considerations, I think, and it's really embedded in what you said is that these things are happening concurrently, and we don't know how that's going to unfold as you have a great storm on top of an earthquake in California. What's that going to do?
mm, mm. Wow. Thank you again, Dr. Damon T. Arnold. We truly appreciate your contribution, your time, and the information you've shared with us, the education you've given us this evening. Very, very insightful, and we are glad to have had and to have begun the year with you. This has been great, and we truly appreciate it for all of you who joined us. Rebecca Mode, Noble Childress, Mutiat Lawal, and for those Selassie, those that I can see here on the screen, thank you all so much for joining. If you didn't share a comment and that I didn't see your name, please pardon me. We hope to get Dr. Arnold here in the days or the weeks to come on this channel. This has been your host. This has been the number one community. This is the number one community builder platform in the entire world. We are located here in the city of Chicago. We're the producers of the exchange ceremony restoring the royalty. It's coming up this year, June 22nd, in the month of Juneteenth. It's going to be another glorious expression of the diaspora's culture, our rich heritage, our royalty. Is a platform to heal and bring Black people together. And so, mark June 22nd. It's going to be another very insightful and uplifting event. That said, we want to thank you all once again for joining us. Dr. Arnold, we look forward to seeing you sometime soon on the show.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you. I really seen it. Aliko, you are doing something that's fantastic, that was deeply needed in our community. And I already have June 22nd on my calendar. I will not miss something like that. And and I'll be launching a Kajabi platform, so people can talk about the public health thing. But it's public health professionals, and I think all of us in one way or another are affecting the culture we're in and our community from a public health perspective. So that's really the message.
Fantastic. And we look forward to sharing some more. If you want to know more about Dr. Arnold's projects, you can reach out to us or you reach out to, is there any information, contact number or any contact information you want to share, Dr. Arnold?
Well, people can, they can use my email, the dtarnold at currently.com for now.
Okay.
But the Kajabi platform is probably going to be launched within the next month. But we're doing all the mechanics behind it and that kind of thing. But it's really, I really want to see it unite us from Africa to Central America to South America to North America to Canada to London, right? We're all over the world, and
Absolutely.
we are contributing to this thing in ways. One quick thing about Onesimus. Onesimus was an African slave who was under Cotton Mather, who was a preacher in Boston in 1724. He actually taught them how to inoculate people against smallpox, which had been practiced in Africa for hundreds of years. They were actually, using small amounts of snake venom in children to prevent them from dying from snake bites. So it was actually the practice and theory behind immunizations. So when he did that, he actually saved tens of thousands of people in Boston, and that was right before 1776, the American Revolution. And we might not have had a country had it not been for someone like Onesimus, Of
Mm.
course, Cotton Mather got a big medal from the Royal Academy of Sciences in England as the discoverer, right? Which he had no scientific background. But Onesimus never got any recognition for that. And that's the
And,
kind of thing I'm talking
and
about.
there's a black person.
Yes, Onesimus was from Africa.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Wow. That's and I heard the vaccine was also in, initiated by a black and an African, no, an African slave in
Yeah,
Virginia.
yes, used for use here, but it had been practiced in Africa for hundreds of years, and we automatically ascribe the this whole thing to Jenner came later, and other people came.
I think we're having the conversation after the conversation, which is very, very good, right?
Oh
This
yeah,
these
okay.
these are nuggets of information that it's needed. We need to know. We need to do this education among ourselves so we can be enlightened about who we are, the legacy we have built, and how we can contribute to our society, global warming, public health, and culture, bringing uplifting our brothers and sisters who may have lost it one way or the other,
Yeah,
lifting up the broken, and just giving hope to the next generation. So
that's right.
this has been very productive, and I really want to thank you for coming, Dr. Arnold.
Oh, thank you, thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so to our listeners, thank you so much once again for joining us. This is Senna, aka Alinko, with the Progressive Minds. Remember, to whom much is given, much is required. Next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m., we'll be here. Please remember to share the feed on Facebook. When you're on YouTube, like it, of course, subscribe, turn on the notifications so when we come, you can be alerted that we're here. And also remember that if you want your website built, all your graphic works done, reach out to us at 815-409-9123. We got you. Great quality graphic work websites at a very affordable price. Try us and you will not regret it. Dr. Arnold, once again, have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye. See
Thank
you
you.
next week, Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alrighty.
Bye.